The following is a sponsored program paid for by First Alliance Credit Union. Welcome to Good Money Moves, featuring Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union and Andy Brownell. Here's Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Hello, everyone. It's time for Good Money Moves. I'm Andy Brownell, along with Jenna Taubel, Director of Brand and Digital Member Experience with First Alliance Credit Union. Hi, Jenna.
Hey, Andy.
Well, throughout last month, the month of December, we talked about preparing for winter, preparing for the new year, and even some of the financial lessons we can learn from Charlie Brown's Christmas. What are we going to talk about today to ring in the new year?
Yeah, well, first, Happy New Year. We made it to 2024.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so the new year, right, is the time where everybody starts to think about making resolutions and just wanting to do better in this new year. It's kind of that fresh start. And I'll bet that you don't know, though, how many of those resolutions are related to finances.
You're right, I don't.
Well, according to the website Wallet Hub, 1 in 3 Americans usually make finance-related New Year's resolutions. And a lot of these resolutions have to actually deal with some very basic financial literacy issues, right? People want to save more. People want to spend less. They want to buy something expensive like a new car or fund a house remodel or buy their first home, right? So
makes sense.
I thought today we could talk about how we can actually help everyone who wants to reach these financial New Year's resolutions by giving them the 5 basic steps that they can take to get financially literate so that they can meet their goals. Because a lot of these are actually really basic concepts that many people know at least something about, right? But maybe don't know how they work together or how to use them to reach their goals. So, but that being said, there's also a lot of people out there who maybe don't feel very financially literate. And so this could be a really great opportunity to just kind of understand the basics again, right? So according to a website, Civic Science, 60% of people say they're somewhat financially literate, and 10% of people say that they don't feel that they're financially literate at all.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So the odds are good that most people listening today are going to learn something. So even if you feel like you know a lot about financial literacy basics, it's also going to be a great refresher on those basics to just kind of solidify maybe what you already know and feel like you have some intuition.
Well, that's a great idea and appropriate, seeing it's the start of the new year to get a fresh start. So I guess what's the first step for learning financial literacy?
Yeah, so the very, very first step towards learning financial literacy is to get control of your money. And this is possibly the most important part of financial literacy, right? Because when you have your money under control, you know where it's going each month. And more importantly, you kind of get this peace of mind just knowing that you have all of your necessary expenses covered. And that when you do decide to spend money on something like a movie or a cup of coffee, right, you aren't using that money that should be going towards an electricity bill or rent, right? You can feel comfortable knowing you're spending money on the things that are a necessity as well as those wants and more fun things. So the best way to get your money under control is to come up with a plan for how you're going to spend your money each month, right? You list out your expenses, prioritize those expenses that are necessities, make sure you can pay those first, and make sure that the total of all your expenses doesn't exceed the amount that you get paid each month. In other words, a budget, the thing we talk about all the time on this show. Now, obviously, regular listeners might notice that we do refer to budgets a lot, and there is a really good reason for that, right? If you don't know where your money is going month after month, how will you know if you have anything left to save or put towards a financial goal? And moreover, how will you know where you can cut expenses in order to focus on things that actually matter to you?
Excellent points. A basic starting point. So I guess that leads to the next step towards financial literacy.
It does. Yeah. So the next step is really saving regularly, right? So learning to save money is really your first step towards becoming financially secure. And when you put money aside for, let's say, an emergency fund, you don't have to worry about what will happen if you get into an accident or you lose your job, right? You have that cushion to help you along the way until you can get back on track. And saving money also protects your assets. So if you encounter financial difficulty, you won't have to dip into your retirement funds or sell your car or your house, right? So your savings will also generate interest, which means your money will start earning money. And even better, the earlier you start saving, the more you can take advantage of compounding interest, which just means your money is going to grow faster and faster.
You gotta love compound interest.
Yes, absolutely.
It's what the IRS terms passive earnings.
Yeah. Yep.
You're not working for it. Your money's
Passive
working for
income.
you.
Yeah.
So all excellent reasons to start saving and continue to save on a regular basis. How much is the big question? How much should I save?
Yeah, so a lot of financial experts are saying that you should start out by trying to save like 10% of each paycheck. That being said, this is not a rule you have to follow. It's just a recommendation, right? If you don't have 10% you can save, then don't do that. But maybe you can do 5 or maybe you can do 2, right? So if you don't have a lot of money left over at the end of each month, again, just set aside what you can afford. And the bigger issue here is not so much how much you're saving, it's whether or not you're doing it regularly, right? Saving $25 one time a year is not going to get you very far, right? Saving $25 regularly every month, now that's building you up to a really nice emergency fund by the end of the year. It's a great start. So that being said, if you do have more than 10% left over at the end of each month that you can put towards savings, you should definitely do that. And you can always slowly, if you're very new to saving, it can be really hard to know how much can I really afford to put aside and still meet all my financial expectations other than savings, right? Start small, and every time you get a raise, every time you get a bonus, every time you feel like, oh, I could probably be saving a little bit more, do that. Like bump it up gradually. And this actually becomes a lot easier to do if you're able to get your paycheck directly deposited into your account. And you can actually use direct deposit to kind of help split up your paycheck automatically or set up automatic transfers within like an online banking platform to start to move that money around so you don't physically have to do it. You're kind of removing yourself from the equation because sometimes you get in your own way when it comes to saving money. It's kind of that fear of missing out. Well, if I move this money over, I might not have it to go do this other fun thing, but you're actually just kind of stealing from yourself long term. So,
and that would be the whole point, is to stop you from doing that in the first place and have that discipline in order to save. And just from my own experience, once you start the process, it is motivational.
It is.
Because as that little pot grows larger, if you just, that even starting on a little bit of time, all of a sudden I had no savings. Next thing you know, I have $500.
Right. Yeah.
So what's to stop me from having $1,000?
Exactly. Yeah. The more you do it, the more motivating it gets. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. We're talking about basic steps to become financially literate. And that equates into making good money moves. And we'll continue with more good money moves with Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union in just a moment on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking good money moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. I'm Andy Brownell, and we're talking about basic steps towards financial literacy. We've covered starting savings, but more importantly, getting a budget. Start with a budget.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were talking about before the break, it doesn't take much to get started with a savings habit. And there are plenty of easy ways to get started using the tools available. So I've started that. The process is going well. What is the next step towards financial literacy?
Yeah, so the next step to becoming truly financially literate is your ability to manage money and get out of debt, right? Manage your money so that you can get out of debt and you're not having more debt than you can manage, right? So, and I know that this maybe seems more like a goal than an actual step, but in truth, knowing how to manage your debt is a very crucial component of financial literacy, because you are never you may have moments in time where you don't have any debt, but you'll never go through your entire life without having debt. And not all debt is bad debt. But if you are in debt, you need to know how to get out of it fast if you're in over your head. And you need to know how to keep up with it so that you're not falling behind and you're not having to pay out more than you're bringing in, right? And the other piece of that is also debt locks up your money that you could be using towards other goals. So it's important you kind of take charge on managing that, and that you know how much you owe, so that the longer you take, right, to pay off that debt, the more you're going to owe. So you have to really understand where that sits. And where this especially hurts people is when they have high interest debt and revolving debt like credit cards. Two things where you can keep adding to it and the interest rate is super high. This is where a lot of people get into trouble.
Because you can make your minimum payments and you're still not shrinking the debt. You're actually adding to the debt at that point because the interest rates are that high.
That is very, very true. And the fact that you could make the minimum payment and then add more on top of that and add more on top of that and add more on top of that, you get yourself into this really frustrating cycle if you're not managing it appropriately. So fortunately, there are many strategies, many options for paying off debt. And you can focus on paying off one debt at a time, either the debt that you maybe owe the most on or the debt that you owe the least on. Doesn't matter where you start, whatever's motivating to you. You can take out something like a debt consolidation loan that will shrink the number of payments you have to make into one. So instead of making 5 payments to 5 different credit cards, that debt consolidation loan pays those off, and now you're just making payments to the one loan. And in a lot of cases, you might even save some money over time because you tend to get a lower interest rate with debt consolidation loans than you do with credit cards. So a couple benefits to going that route. But even more fortunately, there's a lot of really good resources available to help you pay off your debts, right? So we've devoted countless episodes of this podcast to this very topic, and you can find a lot more information on this if you take a look at our blog. We have all kinds of information on our website about paying off debt. We even have like a debt payoff kit on the website that can help you start to organize your debts and figure out, well, which ones do I want to prioritize first, and can help you kind of start to track your progress towards paying off that debt.
So it's all really good points, especially paying off the debt part.
Yeah.
And it's what I was thinking about when you were talking about it is when you start that process, it can seem overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like the savings. Once you get started and just get moving on it, it becomes motivational again.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part with any of this is getting started and knowing where to start and how to start. Because there's a lot of information out there and it can be really overwhelming to
But it's cool.
know.
It's cool. You mentioned as well that you have the stuff materials out there that will make it a lot easier to get started, like
Yeah.
a debt payoff kit that
Hmm.
First Alliance has available for free.
Yeah.
What a great way to get started and gain some confidence towards becoming towards financial literacy by paying down that debt.
Yeah.
And I guess that would lead us to what is the next step that we should be looking at as we start out this new year.
Yeah. So another really important step is to take a look at your credit score, right? Kind of goes along lines of managing your debt. This is a component of that. And we've talked many times again on this show about the importance of credit scores. Um, you need a good credit score to get anything from a credit card to a house, right? And even some employers look at your credit score when they're deciding whether or not to hire you. Landlords and other even utility companies sometimes will look at your credit
And
score to
some
decide whether or
insurance
not
companies.
insurance companies, right? So it's important that you know what your score is and that you're doing your best to manage it and keep it a positive score. So if you've never looked at your credit score before and you're not sure where to start, it's actually very easy these days to keep tabs on this. For example, all of the members of First Alliance Credit Union have access to their free credit score in our online banking and mobile app. You can look at it any 40 times a day if you want, no charge, right? So there's plenty of other websites out there where you can, look up your credit score as well. Um, if you've got a credit score of at least 700, you can feel like you have a pretty good credit score. If you've got a score of like 750, that is like excellent. You're probably not going to have any problem accessing the things that you need to access. Now, if your credit score is below that 700 mark, you might want to work on taking some steps to increase it. So, steps are things like we just talked about a moment ago, paying down your debts. It's a great way to start to manage that. You can also boost your credit score by making sure that you're making payments on time and consistently on time every time. That's another component that makes up your credit score. And while you're doing that, I would also suggest that you take time to review your credit report. Now, this is the big long document that makes up that score. So make regularly kind of checking that to make sure that any debts that you have paid off have been marked as paid, that there are no other errors that show up on there that might be negatively affecting your score. And you can get a free credit report from each one of the 3 reporting bureaus for free every year. So this is a great opportunity to take a look at that and review that.
So I can check that for free 3 times a year, essentially.
Correct. Yeah, and they all
Perfect.
should relatively say the same thing.
All right, but the score may be slightly different because of the way they calculate it.
Correct.
Okay. See a little financial literacy seeping through.
Yeah.
We do need to take another break. We'll return with more good money moves. Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking good money moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back to Good Money Moves. I'm Andy Brownell with Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. And Jenna, you said there are 5 steps to get financially literate. And by my count, we've done 4 of them. So what's the 5th and final one?
Yeah, so if you've followed the steps that we've talked about so far in the show, you should have a good handle on your money through the present. Now it's time to think about the future and set some financial goals for yourself. So this is another component of financial literacy is the ability to set financial goals and achieve them. So, and of course, that's what everyone right now, New Year's is trying to do. That's what a New Year's resolution is. It's a goal. And if you have a financially based New Year's resolution, you need to be able to do this in order to meet your resolution and kind of crush the new year, right? So, again, we've covered a lot on our show already. And in the First Alliance Credit Union blog, there's tons of information out there too about how to set financial goals, especially around the New Year's. And really, it's all about just creating a plan about how you're going to achieve this goal. So, first and foremost, you need to take some time and think about what it is you actually want. You know, if your ultimate goal is to own a lake house or get a pontoon boat, write those down. If you've got a ton of goals that you want to do, you're going to have to prioritize them. You may be able to tackle one or two in a year if they're really big. Smaller ones, you might be able to fit in more. But if you're new to kind of setting financial goals, start small, right? Don't overdo it. So finally, I think what's important then is to make sure that those goals are actually actionable. And that's where we come in back to that SMART goals framework that we talk about a lot on the show. So SMART being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. So specific meaning how much money do you need to reach your goal? Measurable, how are you going to measure that progress? Is it amount of money you saved? Is it how much you've cut back expenses? Is it how much debt you've paid off? Like, what is your measure for progress? Attainable being where will you get the money to put towards this goal, right? If it's a savings goal, and again, this is where having that budget we talked about at the very beginning of the show is so important. This is how you're going to figure out where this money is going to come from to reach this goal. Realistic is another important piece. Is this goal something you can actually attain based on your current financial situation? If it's not, you may have to go back and revisit the measurable and attainable piece of this framework. Now, time bound is the other really important piece here. How long is it going to take you to reach this goal? This is what helps you stay on track and stay focused. If you're giving yourself 6 months to reach something, that's a very different type of goal than one that you feel like you can reach in 3 years, right? So that is an important component of this framework. Now, once you've gone through and answered all of these questions, you're going to have an actual roadmap you can use to reach your financial goals in 2024. And we talked about a couple of different tools that are available on First Alliance website earlier in the show. And another one that we have that's a free downloadable is a SMART Goals Kit that you can use to help you brainstorm goals and come up with SMART goals using this framework. It lays it out really nicely for you so that you can start to make some really impactful progress on those financial goals.
And now it all makes sense because if you take the first 4 steps and then combine it with the last step, you're going to use all 4 of those previous steps to make this all work.
Exactly. Yep. It all comes full circle.
Yeah. You can pay off debt, which will give you more access to money to achieve the goal. The savings, the same thing. And I imagine you could use this if you wanted to plan for an early retirement. Go, I want to retire in 10 years and research it, and you'll be able to figure out how much you have to save every month. Yeah. And stick with it during that 10-year period to get to where you want to be. And if it's not realistic, you go, okay, maybe it's 15 years.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what's so great about the SMART Goals framework is you can use it for all kinds of things. It doesn't it's a one size fits all framework, I like to say.
Yeah. Perfect. And as always, great information. Good way to start the new year, Jenna. But I also feel that there's a lot more we could cover on this topic, especially financial literacy. And I also imagine that you have some places where we can find out more if we wish to take the time to do so.
Absolutely. I mentioned a handful of free resources on our website, and our website is firstalliancecu.com. You can subscribe to our blog there. You can access the debt payoff kit, the SMART goals kit, budgeting worksheets and calculators, debt payoff calculators. All of that stuff is out there for free for anybody who wants to grab it. And of course, if we mentioned some past episodes of this show today, you can listen to those at firstalliancecu.com/podcast or on kerocnews.com. You can also subscribe to Good Money Moves on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. And of course, if you love the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. If you have a financial topic or question you would like answered on Good Money Moves, please send me an email at marketing@firstalliancecu.com. And of course, if you want help using any of our worksheets or even just setting goals or reviewing your finances and your credit score, I strongly encourage you to reach out to our team at First Alliance Credit Union. They are here to help you start making good money moves today.
All right. First Alliance Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. Jenna, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks again, and we'll talk next week with more Good Money Moves. This is Good Money Moves on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.